Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly updates for the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and I'm connecting from the HEALEY Center for ALS and Mass General, and I'm here with our patient navigator, Catherine Small, also from the HEALEY Center. I'm going to give participants in this audience, in this webinar, a few seconds to join. I know people are joining from the waiting room, so let me just wait for everyone to be here. And then if we can go to the next slide, when we have all the audience here, I wanted to introduce our guest speakers for tonight. I'm so honored to have our guest speakers from a fantastic site participating in the HEALEY ALS Platform Trial, the Hospital for Special Care in New Britain, Connecticut. And tonight we're joined by Honora Dalamagas, a research manager and clinical research coordinator at the site, as well as Natalie Cartwright, clinical research coordinator from the site. And as you may remember, we had another coordinator here last week from a different site, and the purpose of having research nurses and clinical research coordinators on this call is really to have to give you a sense of how different sites operate, and obviously with special emphasis on Hospital for Special Care. Again, a great site participating in the trial. So with that, I would like to turn it over to you, Honora and Natalie, to tell us more about the work that you do in Connecticut.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paganoni. So I just, if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I just wanted to briefly talk about what it looks like to participate in a clinical trial here at Hospital for Special Care. So during the recruitment process, we work really closely with our ALS clinic. So our clinic is an ALS Center of Excellence, and they see about 250 people with ALS every year. So generally, our neurologists will introduce the idea of research, and if the individual is interested in participating or getting some more information, they'll meet with a coordinator at the end of their clinic visit, and we'll go into more detail about the different trials that we have available. So then once a participant enrolls in the trial, they're going to be coming into our site for research visits throughout the course of their participation. So the way that we do it at our site is we have one coordinator who will follow the participant throughout the course of the trial. And we find that that really helps our participants feel comfortable because we build rapport with them. We really get to know them. We get to know their medical history, their medications, any health changes that they have. So that also, in addition to helping the participant feel comfortable, that helps us as coordinators to collect really clean, accurate, and consistent data. Additionally, during the research visits, our participants will have all of their assessments done generally in one location. So we have an image of our research exam room here just for an idea of where our participants are having their research visits. And this really we found is the most time efficient and again, the most comfortable for our participants. They don't have to go from location to location. They know who's going to be doing their assessments. Again, it's generally that one coordinator who does the majority of the visit. And so that helps. They're not moving around. We don't have to wait for one person or another person to come in. And it helps with these lengthy visits to make them as efficient as possible. And then our interactions with our participants don't end with the end of the research visit. We really encourage all of our participants to stay in communication with the coordinators between visits so that if they have any questions or concerns or any changes they want to let us know about, or we also encourage them if they want us to send any of their research records to any of their other physicians, we'll gladly do that. So we really do encourage that communication. Additionally, some of the results from research visits aren't actually available while the participant is still on site. So for example, labs might take a couple days to come back. So what our site does is we look very closely at all of the lab results or any other results that come in after the participant leaves. And if there's anything that's out of the ordinary or that might warrant additional treatment or follow-up with another physician, we'll reach out to that participant right away, let them know about the results that we found, and encourage them to reach out to their other physicians, either their primary or other specialists as appropriate. And again, if they would like us to, we can send those results directly to that physician. And that we find really helps with continuity of care. And it really ensures that our participants know that they're getting the best care possible while they're involved with research at our site. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Honora, and if we could go to the next slide, please.
Thank you for having us. One thing that's so important, we're talking about keys to success at our site, Hospital for Special Care. And one thing that's not on this slide is really our research personnel. And I am so honored to have the pleasure of working with Dr. Felice. He's extremely supportive of us. He's highly efficient, and because of this, really has set us up for success. I also am extremely privileged to work with two other study coordinators, Natalie Cartwright, who you just heard from, and Zainab Iqbal, who have been wonderful. And the key thing is, we also have Stephanie Beck, who works in budget and contracts. And we are truly a team. We all work together. There's not one person that stands out. And this, I think, is truly the reason for our success. We're small, but I often say that we're mighty because we are all supportive of one another. We have high respect for each other, and we really work together as a team. And especially with the HEALEY trial, as Natalie said, we base our treatment plan and what we do. A lot of it comes from my philosophy. My background is a nurse in critical care for 10 years. So I really have seen patients in critical aspects and what works best. So the continuity of care is huge. And this is really important for our team. So based on that, I'm going to start from the bottom, the blocks on the bottom, because I feel that we have such a strong foundation at Hospital for Special Care, and it all begins with our organization. If you can look the picture to the left, you can see what we have done. We have little tricks that we use for Regimen A. We use the same thing that you'll see in slides by Dr. Paganoni in the end. We color coordinate everything. So Regimen A is orange, Regimen B is blue, C is blue, and Regimen B is green. So it's very easy for us to look. We have numerous charts, so we can just key in. By having an organization, we're more efficient. We do every research the same way. So our files are set up the same way, regardless of what research we're doing. And again, that leads to consistency, which I think is extremely important. If you do things the same way over and over again, you're less likely to miss anything. You're less likely to make errors, and you have better continuity of care. So all these things leads to better outcome. And as we move up, documentation. Again, being an RN, again, we look at the legal aspect. So I've trained Natalie and Zainab. If you don't document, it didn't occur. So this is really important because we get raving reviews from our monitors. We try to do everything the same, although each of us have different degrees. You should be able to look at our patient binders and it should be consistent throughout. So we try to really appreciate, again, we have that team approach where we want to make it easy for the monitors. We know that it's hard for them. We want to make it easy for the sponsor. So we try to help everybody. We're all caught on time, and we're trying to do the things the most efficient way. So again, if you have accurate documentation, it leads to clean data. And also when we're doing queries, now that we're closing out our regimens, we've had patients that have been in this for 2 years now. So if we look back and we get a query, basically a question of what a data point, we can go back and it's clearly documented. So anybody should be able to follow your documentation. Communication, this is imperative. At the beginning, when we have a participant come into our study, we have them sign a medical release. And the reason being is patients feel more comfortable and we gain their trust if they know that they're the focus for us. we're an advocate for them. So we tell them, I like to keep everybody open and knowledgeable. So we'll send their labs if they'd like to their primary. We'll send it in the clinic when they come to the clinic. We send their labs SVCs. And we also, by having open communication, it prevents different tests from being repeated over again. And by this way, it builds the trust, and the patients are able to, when we see them, they're able to email us and tell us if they have any adverse events, if they're changing any of the medications. So all that, the open communication really helps when the patient comes in for the visit. It cuts down on that time as well. As far as safety, again, this is where my critical care comes in. I like to be proactive rather than reactive. So we look, we want to prevent problems. So, and we also, as a nurse, I look at the patient as a whole. So even though it's an ALS trial, we look at their lab values, their mental status, their anxiety. We spend a lot of time with our patients, and that's really an asset of being in the trial. So we try to present these things to the participants. A lot of them are so nervous when they get diagnosed with ALS, and their anxiety is high. So if we can build trust with them and decrease their anxiety, all these positive things really promotes healing. So our ultimate goal is and to have a positive attitude. So our goal is we try to be an advocate for our patients. We really want them to see the excellent care that they're getting and to be confident in us. If you go to a physician and you know that everybody's working to provide you the best care, doing things efficiently, managing the needs that you have, and getting back in a timely manner. So although we have one research nurse will take care of one patient, all of us are on all emails. So if one of us is tied up, we try to get back as quickly as possible. So I think all these things really provide excellent satisfaction, and it really helps with retention of our patients. And I just really want to put a huge shout out to all the research participants, because without them, we wouldn't be able to advance science. So thank you for that. And thank you, Mass General, for doing all these studies and having us be a part of this wonderful opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Honora and Natalie. So I had to say, you explained a lot of your organization at the site, which is something that we've been discussing during these webinars. The trial has to happen the same way, essentially, at every site, in the sense that we need to collect the same data, and that's incredibly important because that's how we can tell if the drug is effective or not. That said, we really enjoy learning more about the special features and the flavor, the character of every different site. And so I think that we really rely on the boots on the ground, the people who are actually doing the research to come up with ideas for organization, documentation, etc. And so I think, your site has a lot of experience in ALS trials. And so obviously, as you mentioned, Honora, you are also training new people. And so it's really great to see that kind of, continuity. And as you said, you ended on the most important note, which is really to thank the participants who interact with every one of our sites. And because of their participation, we can, discover more about ALS. So that's obviously the most important piece. And so with that, I just wanted to provide a couple of updates, as we do every week, about the trial. If we can go to the next slide, and then if you have any questions for our guest speakers, please type them in the Q&A chat. So at this time, again, we're very excited to be learning about 5 new drugs, 5 new investigational products that obviously at this point, we don't know if they work for ALS or not, but again, thanks to the help of all participants, all ALS patients who are participating in the trial, and all sites, like the Hospital for Special Care, we should be able to get a lot of information and a lot of data about each of these drugs very soon. Next slide. So right now, we are enrolling new participants in one regimen. That's the newest, the youngest of the regimens, Regimen E, testing trialos. And those are the numbers in terms of our enrollment so far. So again, thank you so much for those of you who are continuing to enroll in these trials so that we can learn more about Regimen E or trialos. And we are, for the other regimens, we're not enrolling new participants, but we're certainly very active and actively closing out so that we can give you results over the course of the summer or fall. Certainly over the next few months, we anticipate results for the first few regimens. Next slide. And if you have questions about which site would be nearest to you, this is in the information on our website. You can use the QR code. And next slide. As always, you can also call Catherine and Alison to connect to find out more about the nearest site. I'm very excited for next week's webinar as well, where we will have Bruce Rosenblum, a member of our EAP Patient Advisory Committee, come as a guest speaker. And then we have more guests coming up. We have the SIPI at our site in Idaho. Very excited to be entering a new geography with this new site. I just joined the platform trial. And then that will be followed by a meeting with Gail Kiddle, who is the director of outcomes training. And that's very important. So just like, our guest speakers tonight mentioned, we really need to document and collect all the data in a very systematic and rigorous way. And so part of the way we do that is to have a centralized center for training and sort of certification for our outcomes. So people who measure things like the ALSFRS-R, for example, or muscle strength or respiratory capacity, they're all specifically trained and certified by the center directed by Gail, and they have to undergo refreshers and trainings and all of that to continue to maintain consistency in the way they measure certain things, whether it's muscle strength, respiratory capacity, or the ALSFRS-R, because obviously we need to continue to train new people and retrain everyone and always be on the same page. So really an important role there. So she'll join to explain how that works. Next slide. And then I do want to mention that we're going to have a webinar to discuss the logistics and sort of the details from a participant's perspective of Regimen E. So right now we are enrolling new participants in Regimen E. So we'll have Dr. Cudkowicz and Dr. Lada, who are the co-lead investigators for Regimen E. They will join us for this special webinar. It's going to be on a different day. It's going to be on a Friday, not a Thursday. And you see the date there. And you also see the QR code to register. The recording will also be available on the NAILS website. And the reason we wanted to have this webinar is to really kind of, describe and detail a little bit more the procedures for Regimen E so that you can get familiar with what the logistics are in terms of participation in Regimen E. And so with that, I think we can stop sharing the slides. And again, if you have questions for Natalie and Honora, please type them in the Q&A box. The first question is whether there are trials for people who carry the C9orf72 mutation, but have not had symptoms of ALS yet. Now, that's an important question. I think I can take this. And basically, not to my knowledge, actually not for C9. I would say that there is a trial for people who carry the mutation in the SOD1 gene, which is a different gene. And so that's the ATLAS trial sponsored by Biogen. So if you have the SOD1 gene mutation in your family, that's something that I would certainly recommend looking into. And that's not only, that's also for people that, carry the mutation but don't have the disease yet. I'm not aware of any program for C9 along those lines. That said, I would not be surprised if they were set up soon. So there's a lot of efforts trying to set up trials, just like the one the person who asked the question mentioned. So trials to prevent ALS. So there will be trials of gene therapy or antisense oligonucleotides or other technology that could turn off genes, and it could be different genes, So certainly lots of interest there. They're not available yet, but I would imagine that, they will be available, over the next few years. So as a next question, I wanted to ask Honora and Natalie, if you can tell us a little bit more about, if somebody is interested in connecting with you at the Hospital for Special Care, what would be the best point of contact? How do they make contact with you?
I would say generally email is probably best. A phone call is welcome as well. It's just, if we're in with participants during the day, we might not be able to answer the phone right away, but always feel free to leave a message. If I don't know if we want to put the email in the chat, I can do that. Or if you want to contact Catherine, one of the patient navigators, or look on the Mass General HEALEY website to find my email address is on there. So I'm okay to put it in the chat if that would be.
Oh yeah, I see Catherine already put it.
Perfect.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah, so feel free
Teamwork.
to reach out by email. That's probably the best way to get in contact.
Great. Great.
And what we encourage is include both Natalie and myself on there. If one of us, we really try to get back and within the same day, we try very hard. So if one's in with the patient, usually the other one is like a runner or answers the questions. So that's how we work so well as a team.
Great. I see a question about oral Radicava. So the question is when it will be available in pharmacies. Do you have any insights that you want to share, Honore? Or
we actually just heard, we had a team meeting this afternoon, that it is in pharmacies now. So I think it's at that point, it's a matter of how quickly it can go through the ordering and insurance process. So I think it's coming and it's pretty close to being available.
yeah, it should be over the next few days or weeks. And obviously one step is to have it in the pharmacies, and then there's some other administrative procedures such as insurance reimbursement and the drug being on formulary for different hospitals. So there's a couple of more steps, but I would imagine that should be soon. Yeah, so there's a question about, will there be trials for slow progressing ALS for people who have had the disease for more than 5 years? And Honora, I don't know, or Natalie, if you have had experiences with trials for people who have had the disease for that long.
Well, we're doing the EAP program with Klein. So this is something that what our goal is, especially as a nurse, I feel like we always have to offer hope to these participants. So we're really looking to get more EAP programs involved at Hospital for Special Care. I think there's such that population that want to contribute to science and are being left out. So we're really that's our next goal, is to work towards that.
Great, well
said. And
said.
we've had such phenomenal response with Clean in the EAP program that we've had. Yeah.
So again, while most clinical trials do have some criteria for entry, such as, for example, oftentimes based on time since onset, yes, you're absolutely right. There's also, the need to develop more EAP options for people who don't meet those criteria. And I know you've been a great partner in developing that. So thank you for that. So there's a question about AMX 35, and there's a question about, why the date was moved from June 29 to September 29th, and, if that could be reconsidered. So, I mean, again, that's, already been, there's been a press release about that. I would say that in general, it's not unusual for dates to be moved and postponed. So I just want to provide that perspective. Obviously, we all prefer for things to be decided sooner rather than later, but it's actually not unusual in, sort of in this type of industry to do that. Just wanted to provide that as a general context. In terms of why it was moved back, again, as discussed in the press release, there's been additional material that's been submitted, and so it's important for the agency to take more time to carefully consider that. I actually take that as a positive sign. So again, while obviously we all hope for a decision sooner rather than later, again, I think that this is a good sign given new important material was submitted. So I think, I have another question. So Catherine, maybe you can ask the
Yeah,
question since
so
you
I
received
typed
it
it in the
directly.
chat and I could not be more vague. So I was speaking to somebody on the phone this week, and they had a good question where I know we were talking about, you know, in relation to that C9 question, the platform trial doesn't specifically target gene carriers. It's open to any form of ALS within the eligibility criteria. So the question I got this week was basically, are we choosing drugs that, you know, each regimen has a different mechanism, so we're targeting different pathways, or are we testing drugs that act on the same pathways? Why are we choosing drugs that work on those pathways? You know, are they ones that apply to everyone?
Yeah.
Kind of along those lines.
No, this is a great question. Thank you for raising that. So there is a therapy evaluation committee that's composed of several scientists and experts in ALS that reviews the science behind the drugs that are submitted for inclusion. So to clarify, for a drug to be part of the platform trial, the company must first apply. So if they don't want to be part of it and they don't apply, obviously they won't be part of it, right? So they have to first apply. And then all the applications are reviewed, and there's been a number of them, are reviewed by a therapy evaluation committee based on the science. So is this a drug that has some promise, a shown promise based on data in the lab or perhaps in early phase trials? So those are the criteria. So far, you know, most of the drugs that were submitted and all of the drugs that were selected were drugs that had a mechanism of action that was potentially applicable to all forms of ALS. Now, should a company submit a product that's only applicable to a specific subset, then we could consider that. You know, it's just that, you know, so far again, the drugs that were selected were applicable to all forms of ALS, which in a way it's good. Like, you know, we want to make the most impact, the broadest impact, you know, with these drugs. The other question is, do they all have the same mechanism of action or not? Actually, they don't. And that, again, the main criterion really for selection is the science and how robust the science is. That said, we're actually happy to see drugs that target different mechanisms of action, because the truth is that many things happen in ALS. And so if we just put all our eggs in one basket, then basically we have, you know, lower chances of kind of seeing a positive effect. So it's actually good to test drugs along different pathways. But again, that said, we're open to essentially all types of submissions. And the key criterion is based on the science. So with that, I just wanted to leave the last word to you, Natalie and Honora, if you have anything that you would like to say as we close this webinar.
Just thank you for the opportunity to be a guest speaker on this. It was a lot of fun. And again, thank you to all the participants in the trial and in all ALS trials and research in general. It really makes a difference to have everybody involved and working together.
And we appreciate being so close with Mass General. It's really been an awesome learning experience, and we appreciate the camaraderie and the support that you've given to our site. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, and really great to have you as a site. So thank you so much for this webinar, and we'll see everyone next week. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.